But the bottom line is when you approach, it should never be, think of sex like women do. It's the dessert. When guys think about sexual interaction, they think about it as the main event. When they pick up a woman for a date, it's to get sex. Okay? They're more focused on that as the goal acquisition than they are on the experience of the date. To a woman, sex is the dessert. Okay? I don't know how we got on this topic, but since we started on it, I'll finish it. Pay attention to the experience you're having, and the rest will take care of itself. Because if you come in with sex on the agenda, she will take it off. If you come in without sex on the agenda, she will put it on. Because she will start to wonder why the hell you're not like everybody else. And she'll start to wonder what's wrong with her. And then all of a sudden, things shift. I didn't write the rules, I just report them. Okay? But if you come in with sex on the agenda, no pun intended, she'll take it off. That doesn't mean you don't want to get her excited, get her thinking about sex. You just do it in a different way. The secret is innuendo. When you talk about naughtiness, when you talk about sex, you never use sexual terms. Because she'll fill it in. You start using sexual terms, she runs the other way. People don't always do what you say. They don't always believe what you tell them, but they almost always do what?
They believe what they conclude.
Believe what they conclude. If they're self-generating, the verbiage, the imagery, all of it, because she's doing it, it's native to her internal environment, which means it's exactly the way she wants it to be. You don't have to do much. In fact, in most cases, less is more. Does that make sense? And usually it's just kicking back and letting nature take its course. Pay attention to the 7 stages, and you'll know what to do when. But the secret is no agenda other than, is she cool? Having fun. Regardless of how the date turns out, you're going to have a good time. Okay? Making sure that when you're with her, you're with her. If that makes any kind of sense. But when you're not, you're not. So one of the things that helps when you have good calibration and rapport skills, especially when you're doing vibing or you're keeping the sexual tension going, is when you're dealing with her, she feels like the most important person. But the minute you take your attention away, she wonders why, she starts to want it back. Remember, people fight harder to do what?
To keep what they have.
To keep what they have than they do to get something new. That's the essence of push-pull. The minute a woman has your attention, she's enjoying it till she gets bored. But if it goes away before she's ready to give it up, she fights to get it back. The scarce resource has more what? Value. You guys are getting smart. I like this. Is this any different than what we talked about all week? It's not. It's just a different context. Right? Principles of social dynamics and social influence are universal. They're also hypnotic operators. In Killer Influence, we call these social hypnotic operators. Okay? Yes, Eric.
Oh,
I thought you were having a Lamaze class back there.
well, human birth is not that.
Even giving birth? I don't know what you're giving birth to, and I'm not sure I want to know.
I don't want to know either.
All right, so questions about that? Here's what I want you to do now. You've got since we're on this topic of arousal and seduction, and we have Tara's list of predicate states, right? If we were going to generate the verbal equivalents of those states, how would we do it? Yeah.
You can start with the 3 questions.
Ah, 3 magic questions. Ooh. How about that? Okay, go on.
Understand their verbiage.
Understand their verbiage.
And then you can use the adjective, whatever presupposition,
Okay.
which can automatically and intuitively increase the way she's feeling or you're feeling.
Logically or intuitively?
Both ways.
Okay.
Whichever one you prefer.
Indeed. What do you think?
To list the states out or just in general?
Well, think about it with the outcome in mind, right? What's the outcome?
For me, it would be connection.
Connection? Liar. Anyway,
Why am I lying?
I'm teasing you. Get over
Specify
it.
the form of connection.
She didn't specify, and exactly. See, that's the important thing. And this is important because most women will not sleep with you unless they feel a connection.
Yes.
So how do you engineer it?
Well, the drill we were just using.
You see, most women operate under the misconception that connection is only spontaneous and predestined. Oh yeah, one of the fastest ways to seduce anyone is that, you know what, it's so amazing that the two of us we both are into stamps and we met here today. The minute they think a higher power brought them together, boom, it's over. Look at her. Okay? It can and should be engineered. Don't you want to take the randomness out of that part of your life? Because if these random elements get together, there's no guarantee it's going to be what you want. Okay? But trust me, there's thousands of people who understand this. And then most of them grew up in the lounge lizards of the 70s. Hey baby, what's your sign? You're a Sagittarius. I'm a Sagittarius too. It's fate, baby. Yeah, baby, yeah. You think we should shag now or later? You didn't even catch that one, did you?
3 of them.
That was a double. Should we do
The
this
double
now?
bond. Yeah.
Yeah.
Illusion.
It's called the illusion of choice. Should we shag now or later?
So I've had a question. You say, of course, that people fight to keep what they already have, but it seems like what can happen with men is that they just want to oscillate through women, so they're not
course.
really wanting to keep what they have. They're
Yes.
wanting something new.
What do you think they want to keep? You think it's the woman?
No.
No.
They want to keep what they have, not what they have. Think of how hard they'll fight just before they
Unless that guy sees another guy hitting on you. In which case, they will go apeshit to make sure they keep you.
That's not fair. That's being dirty.
And that's how the world was won.
Nobody ever won by fighting fair. There's no such thing as a fair fight. I don't make the rules. You can cross your arms all you want. It doesn't change the truth of what I'm saying, motherfucker.
Hey!
All right? Yeah, you're one of us now. Deal with it.
I don't agree with that.
You don't have to agree with it. You know what? I'll never be 6 foot tall either.
Yeah, it's like fighting fair, whatever. I mean, I come into situations trying to be ethical, and so I would fight
Who
fair.
said anything about being unethical?
Well, no, but if you're saying playing dirty and stuff.
I didn't say playing dirty. You said it.
I thought that's what you. Okay, so repeat exactly.
So you
what
assumed that I was talking about fighting dirty or doing
something.
something unethical. What does that say about you?
Okay, so
At what point did you realize you're losing this badly?
I feel like I'm not being heard.
Ooh, where did we heard that one before?
It's annoying.
Go ahead.
Seriously though,
Mm-hmm.
if you're saying coming into like that situation where you're not fighting fair.
I never said that. You did.
I thought that's what you were saying.
I said nobody ever won a fair fight.
Yes. Okay. I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you saying fairness is in someone has more abilities? That would be different.
Well, let me ask you this. Theoretically, if two things are exactly even, What's the best you can hope for?
That's why I wanted to go back and see what exactly you meant by that. So you mean not fair as in
There's
there
no
would
such,
actually-
just like it's impossible for a human body to be at rest, it is impossible to have an equal interaction.
Fair is an internal construct. What you think is fair, someone else will disagree with.
That's why I was trying to go back there and understand what was being said. 'Cause it
Yeah.
didn't-
You immediately applied the ethics question. Has nothing to do with ethics.
When you hear fair fighting or not, often it's that someone's doing something that's not.
Fair fighting is bullshit.
Someone's doing,
It's sport.
unless it's a boxing ring
But
or
it's
something
fair,
like
but now I'm
that.
understanding you're saying fair
It's not
means that they have
fair.
more ability.
Fair fighting
And
is
we
an
agree
agreement
upon
on
a set of
rules.
rules, but it's not fair.
But I'm understanding that now because of what he's.
Yeah. And rules are arbitrary and they're context dependent.
In everything he's advised someone to do, what is the first unethical step?
It's if you're using something like, I don't know, okay, so I played video games with my brother, that's what popped into my head. And he would use like every single pattern or whatever is the abilities were, and I would just sit there and beat the crap out of him and I'd win.
Hmm.
But he would be doing like, I thought unfair. That was not fair because we weren't
And yet you
operating-
win, right?
Yeah.
That's not really fair.
Yeah, but that, like, I always thought that
You were
wasn't
putting
fair.
all your
He-
attention on the
He felt
game.
it was okay to learn all these other things and then go at me when he should just be playing at my
Is
level.
it fair for you to put all your attention
So he should
on
just
the
be
game
playing
while
at
he
your
was-
level.
Yeah, he should be just playing with, okay, you know what I mean, you play video games, when you have all those, like, you do the combinations and you can throw,
But
like,
here, Tara, can I put my perspective?
Yeah.
I've taken all the time and training and learning how to pile these different techniques together. It's very unfair that you just intuitively came in and just pressed the right button at the right time without even really knowing what the fuck you've done, and you beat me. And I've been taking time to prepare this.
Where's the fairness in that?
Where's that fair?
Where's the justice, right?
It's just go by.
alright, sorry,
See, the
let
meta-
go of me and go back to the.
Here's my point, and again, I'm only going to point this out. I know it's going to piss you off, but this is something that is endemic to the whole male-female dynamic. Women are only concerned about fighting fair when it has the potential to remove them from the superior position.
Same thing with men.
Okay? The minute anybody has to resort to actually learning, studying, and doing something, it becomes trickery.
Unfair means you beat me doing something that I couldn't do or didn't think of doing first. That's all unfair means.
Okay? Remember, fairness and unfairness are arbitrary distinctions based on your perceptual position. That's it. I don't make the rules. Yes?
I was gonna say, the other night, husband and wife sitting across from each other in a game that I was playing with two other people. The position came where the husband had to do something that's going to have a negative effect on the wife's position, and all she said was, "Oh, you don't want to do that." And then he's like, "Well, I'm trying to win the game," and then she goes, "Then you're going to be sitting on the couch." So what basically he said, he goes, "Okay, so if I don't do that, and she wins, then I win. So if I win, I win. So okay, I won't do that." So we all lost, and she actually ended up winning the game. So I was just like, well, good for you guys, you know. But the rest of us is all trying to win. We got collaboration going on here. But I mean, she said it exactly that way. She's like, you know, it's like,
Really fair,
You-
right?
you
I don't
sleep
think
on
she
the
should have
couch.
said that, but okay.
well, she said it in a playful manner. I'm pretty sure she wasn't completely serious.
She's only partially serious.
But, you know,
It was hidden, but exactly. Plausible deniability.
Yes. I mean, she
The rational lying factor serves a biological survival imperative. It gives us plausible deniability on cross-contextually.
Is it fair that you're much better looking than someone else and have an advantage because of that?
I don't really think about that.
Just because you don't doesn't mean everybody else does. Doesn't.
You didn't answer his question.
Is it fair?
All right, enough. All right. You guys get the idea. You understand the overall concept. All right? Put ethics aside. It's not about ethics. It's not about fair. This is the way the dynamic is structured. You can either, whether you accept it or not, isn't going to change it. But whether you accept it or not will determine how effective you are working within it. And at the end of the day, that's what we're about. Are you being effective? Are you getting what you want? Are you getting what you want? By your standards and definitions. Because if what you're doing isn't getting what you want, the definition of insanity is to keep doing it. The classic definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Unfortunately, what we're doing is familiar. And we always do what? We default to what's familiar. Have we heard this before? Right? Life Lessons 101. If you want a different result, you must do something different, which by definition will be unfamiliar and uncomfortable. It's just the degree of uncomfort that you're going to experience. When seeking the uncomfortable becomes your default state, life gets easier. It's still uncomfortable, but you gain tremendous power and versatility and control of your life. It's the natural human tendency to default to what's comfortable and familiar that will keep you exactly where you are. Okay? And you can hear it hundreds of times until one day you've heard it just enough and everything flips. Now for each of you that's going to be different. Some of you have been hanging out with me for a year, some 2 years, some longer. The principles of human beings do not change. At least not quickly enough that they're relevant. The modes that we interact, the methods and media that we use to interact change. Facebook, the internet, telephones, telegraph, telewoman. You don't remember that joke? 3 fastest ways to disseminate. I think this was done back in like the 60s or 70s. 3 fastest ways to disseminate information: telephone, telegraph, telewoman. Yeah. But on a more wait a minute. On a more practical level, it behooves you guys to understand that dynamic, because when you're interacting, women talk. They talk much more so than men about deeper topics than men do. All right? You start talking to men about sexuality, you get a bunch of men together talking about sexuality, like real sexuality, they run screaming the other way. They'll talk smack, they'll talk locker room, but you can start talking about real, deep, heavy stuff. Well, I wouldn't say heavy, but like real relationship or sexuality stuff. What they like, what they don't like, that kind of thing. They get nervous. They get real tense. Women, they'll talk about that stuff all day long, because that's where they're comfortable. They're comfortable interacting with other people about those issues. Guys, we have all these filters up. We're buried behind them. If the minute we start showing our vulnerable side, no. Okay? We're not all that special. Okay? We have walls too. We have hot buttons. Most of the time we're dumb as rocks is about how this shit works. And then we blame the other side. I applaud Tara for standing up to our onslaught.
Actually, it helped.
Yeah.
It did actually sort out the whole week for me, because I was realizing that I was trying to bring myself and life down to the same level all the time as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so you have all these other abilities, and I wasn't letting myself use them. Mm-hmm. But if you're saying there's no fair fight anyway, then that just takes that out. Yeah. Because you just operate it.
Took me years to realize it. Every human being on the planet, I don't care who you are, with maybe the exception of the Dalai Lama, and even then I don't think that's true, is looking for an advantage, is looking for a way to get what they want.
He's got a built-in advantage already.
Well, it depends on where he's at. If he went to China, I don't think he'd get back out.
Well,
And again, that's probably not even...
You can't even bring photos of him in there. So,
exactly.
Yeah. I remember being held aside with guns, whatever, while they were searching through. Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's like, that's just his picture.
They punished the whole country because of things the Dalai Lama did. He hasn't even been there in like decades.
just tell him to Phil Silvers.
I don't know who that is. It doesn't have any reference. Oh.
Sorry, they look exactly the same.
Right on. Anyway, I probably shouldn't bring up the Dalai Lama in a seduction workshop, but that's right. But, everything.
If you don't, who will?
Exactly, right. So, only David could bring up the Dalai Lama and getting laid in the same sentence. Right? Sam Kinison used to do that shit. I love that guy. Huh? Twice. All right. But honestly, all relationship dynamics are just shades of seduction. It's influencing people to want to do what you want. The way we do it now, it's about influencing people to want to do what you want them to do, not coercing or tricking them. Okay? Understanding social dynamics is no different than understanding good etiquette. It makes you more effective, more polished, and more versatile cross-contextually. So you can even think about it as the etiquette of seduction. Kind of a cool phrase, but it's really kind of true. But again, if you approach somebody with if you guys, especially, this is going to be the hardest thing for you guys to really internalize. Once you do it, you're going to be dramatically successful talking to pretty much any woman. Most women are desperate for the kind of connection that you can readily give them. I mean, seriously. Most women will not sleep with you. That's changing a little bit as things evolve, but still, primarily, a woman will not sleep with you until she feels connection. Most women labor under the misconception that connection is random and predestined. And in most cases, they're right. In most cases. That's not your world any longer. Because the exact kind of connection they're looking for, you are more than capable and trained to give. You know how to do it better than probably any set of people on the planet right now. All you have to, you know the principles, you've tapped into a level of connection that they fantasize about. Now, you haven't gone into that context, but it's just a context. And we've practiced shifting context, haven't we? We've practiced shifting states, haven't we? We've practiced shifting positions of power, haven't we? What's left?
Go out there and do it.
Move through the world being victorious, curious, and playful. Move through the world making everyone around you feel ridiculously good. And give them what they most want. And show them how to get more of what they want simply by doing what you want. Everybody wins. Right? Isn't that what we dream about? Is it fair? Say yes.
There is no fair.
Exactly. You're just more effective.
I would say, David, part of the ethics of what you do with the skills.
Yeah.
More than having skills, the skills. So that
Yeah, I avoid that because everybody, the way most people, when they talk about that aspect of it, it always comes across as ingenuine and like a reframe. The problem is that, again, just put the idea of fairness out of your mind. It's effective. Okay? If you always have the best interest of yourself and the other person, notice the syntax. Because sometimes what's right and appropriate for you is not going to be in their best interest, but for your sake, it has to be done. Someone approaching you in a less than positive way may necessitate a kick to the nuts to them, which may not be in their best interests, but definitely is for you. And yes, combat is communication. That's all it is. It's just another form of communication, which is just another way of saying movement. If you want to keep abstracting, we can go all the way up to it's just living. It's just existing. Because all things that exist move. Don't they? That's called abstraction, logical levels of abstraction. Everything at a higher level controls what's below it. As above, so below. Parallels, patterns, stuff. It's 11:45. You guys ready to eat lunch? Oh, here's the exercise. You have states, or actually you have an outcome. You have predicate states. And now I want you to create the language that cycles through those states, that leads to your outcome. Because your words and your feelings should match, right? Make sense? By the way, one of the best vehicles that we have for delivering all of this, 3 magic questions. Don't need it, but it really makes it easy. Okay? So either before we're going to go to lunch at 12, so if you guys want to work on this before we go, or while we're at lunch, or when we come back, do that, because when we come back, we're going to actually start doing what we're writing about. We're going to start making our states and our sequences match with our words and noticing the effects that they have. That make sense? So we've gone from energetics on up. Right? Good work.
Does anybody else have the reoccurring image of standing on a pyramid of women all throwing little pickles at you?
No.
Pickles.
Must be me.
It's like reverse.
I have certain materialistic... By the way, on a more practical note, engaging in a lot of comedy and things like that before you go out to meet people, good thing. Okay? The more you laugh, the more oxytocin you get, the more playful and lighthearted you become, the more infectious those states become in that CDC kind of way. But you'll get that in a minute, because most of you don't know what the CDC is, right? Center for Disease Control. Non-communicable kind, and forget it. Anyway, laughter, very cool. Very tactically useful. The more playful you are, the easier it is to access states of fun and enjoyment. The more jokes you can crack, the more oxytocin you release, the more people bond to you. Makes you extremely attractive. The secret is to be funny and humorous and playful without being the class clown. Right? Basic rule of 3 applies. You tell one joke, you did something cool. Tell another joke, you still did something cool or funny. Tell 3 jokes, now you're funny. Again, mystery. Great social scientist. You do something once, it's it's just a lucky circumstance. Twice is luck. 3 times, it's identity. Okay? Sexually, give a woman an orgasm, she's having a good night. 2, oh, lightning did strike twice. 3 times, you're a great lover. Takes it beyond coincidence and assigns it to you as a characteristic or a trait. Okay? You'll see this over and over again. Not to mention, the minute she has the 3rd one, or he has the 3rd one, if you're that good, okay, the oxytocin dump locks him or her into you. In this case, for guys, it's vasopressin, but I'm going to use vasopressin and oxytocin under the banner of oxytocin because it's just frickin' easier. Okay? Manage the release of oxytocin wherever you go, and people will simply want to hang out with you, seek you out, do whatever you want, and feel good about it. Because that's the essence of nurturing. When a person is being nurtured, they feel good. When the person is nurturing because of an oxytocin attachment, they receive pleasure from the nurturing. Understand that? You hit all the macro-hypnotic operators in one sweet little package. The blessed hormone. Okay? Give them an orgasm. Oxytocin. It's what's for dinner. Questions? No? All right. Let's start to operationalize our state control. We'll start stringing together linguistic sets to match the states that we're going to cycle through. What might be the most effective way to do that? Story. Very cool. Can we get, even though we're going towards story or sets of story, is there any way that we can start to really mechanically work on the concept of creating wording or sets of dialogue to match the states? Make it even more nuts and bolts, even more basic. I gave you the keys. I gave you the elements of it. I'm trying to see if anybody can actually put it together without me making it explicit. Yes, JP.
Let's do a question and answer game.
How specifically? Or what specifically might you say to initiate that process?
Any version of a three-question.
Three magic questions, okay.
Three magic questions, but I would ask a question that would generally get me into a state. So if you want to talk about money, what is it about, or whatever situation, what is it about feeling good that you enjoy so much? Then you start describing that feel of goodness.
What is it about feeling good that you enjoy so much? What do you think? I think he's on the right track. I just don't necessarily like the question he's asking because of the kind of answer it would elicit.
I mean, you're just trying to get the person to step into that state, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you do the whole vague thing, universally vague, where you start to describe.
Give me an example.
Experience. You remember back to that time when you experienced that rush of pleasure and enjoyment as you think about all those things now that process through your body and that experience, and noticing as you're doing it, you're moving forward and getting more excited about experiencing other things in life now, noticing how wonderful those opportunities are as you connect back to that pleasure and move forward in time into this connection in this space right now. With me?
Okay, you can leave now.
If you approach somebody with that, I'd probably run away.
Why not overdrive?
That would work.
Actually, she has. No, actually, it would work, period. Because did anybody notice that even though she was going kind of fast, she left a few key elements out, you were still going into the state? She hit it in terms of mechanics of how to do it. But she didn't make explicit, well actually she did make explicit what to do. She was more on than off.
Yeah.
She was more on than she was off. Okay? Which is really impressive considering she's never had any exposure to this prior to the week of training. To see that kind of languaging come blurting out of her mouth. Think about how many patterns she was weaving simultaneously. Right? That's what you guys have all been programmed to do. What's that?
Pattern weaving.
Pattern weaving, exactly. That's what you're getting to, is pattern weaving. But the secret to being effective at weaving patterns is the state underlying it. Okay? Because if you're in the state underlying the pattern you're setting out to weave, you're connected to all the resources that you need to congruently deliver the pattern, which is the inverse of rapid romance. Inverse of rapid romance is there's a state you want to elicit, there's a canned script that if you just repeat the words, in theory, should just elicit the state. It doesn't. Well, it does enough to be useful, but it doesn't give you congruence, it doesn't give you facility and adaptability, and it forces, the minute you run out of script, you're out of bullets. You understand the difference? And yes, this will work extremely well on men, especially because you have double D hypnosis. Unfortunately, it's like, hi guys!
Yeah.
You got the attributes, use them. There's a reason why certain people who created those technologies didn't like having good-looking guys in the room. People in seduction fall into one of two categories. They're either social remedials, they have no social skills and usually worse hygiene, or they're naturals looking for an extra edge, which means they're usually decent looking. The secret to making hypnotic attraction skills work is attention. Anything that locks people's attention on you gives you the advantage. Therefore, attractive people have the advantage if they know hypnotic language. Okay? It's just like combat in the martial arts. No matter how much you want to deny it or believe otherwise, larger, stronger people have the advantage in combat. Period. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't come up with all of these techniques to neutralize it.
If it didn't matter, they wouldn't have weight classes.
Okay? Now, the more technique you have, the more capability you have to offset the advantage until the big guy has the same kind of or level of training that you do. In which case, you're back to square one. It's no different in seduction and attraction, pretty much anywhere. The person with the natural set of attributes or superior set of attributes, given the same training and knowledge, will win. Unless you can do something they can't counter. Like shift context, shift identity, shift state. The ugly truth is, in this context, attractive people get more stuff. In the 4 pillars of hypnotic influence that we teach, authority, attractivity, affinity, and acquiescence. Attractivity is queen. Okay? Attractivity inspires compliance and validation seeking. Validation comes in many different forms. People either want to justify themselves to you or get your approval in some way, which is another way of saying your approval in some way. They seek to please and in the process, they receive pleasure from the seeking, usually. Whereas the kind of validation you get from authority tends to be fear-based, and it tends to be more of a supplicant kind of a thing where I kind of lost my train of thought on that, but it'll come back to me. Authority tends to engender passive, aggressive behaviors. They'll comply, but they're going to not like you. Okay? I think the line from Mean Girls says it best as far as this dynamic is just because you hate someone doesn't mean you don't want them to like you. Okay? It's a paradoxical thing, but it's pretty much the way it is. People in authority, people who have status, which is what this is telling us. The reptile is a status-seeking mechanism. Okay? You can have status through authority or status through attractivity. Attractivity is the study and application of attraction and attractiveness. It's the ability to be perceived as attractive, the ability to recognize attraction and operate when you are feeling attraction, and the ability to create attraction. Notice I make a distinction. To function when you are feeling attracted is the most thing because it goes back to state control. Right? To be perceived as attractive is the ability to modulate and manage the environment or the context in which you're operating so that you are perceived in the best possible way. To create attraction is the ability to pick a target or subject and cause that person to feel attraction for you. Attraction is not a choice. Attractivity is. Okay? People do not choose who they become attracted to. By definition, they can't unless you know some really cool neuro-linguistic shifting. But attracting somebody, causing somebody to feel attraction can be engineered fairly reliably and consistently because we're all attracted using pretty much the same buttons in various forms. That's attractivity. When you have all four, people will do what you say, when you say, and they'll feel good about doing it. Now, when I say all four, I'm talking about authority, attractivity, affinity, and acquiescence. Any one of them will work. Any two of them become pretty close to unstoppable. Any four of them, you got no prayer. Because not only do they feel compelled to do what you say because of the authority principle, they want to do what you say because they want you to like them and approve of them. They feel a connection to you as being able to relate, someone they can relate to, and as part of their tribe in terms of affinity. And there's a natural need in many people when they're in those communities and in those situations where they're with their tribe to go along to get along. They simply acquiesce because that's just kind of how they're hardwired. Anybody who doesn't, we would call those people antisocial. We have special places for people like that. We call them jails. Okay? People who go to the extreme of these, contra to these, they tend to be outcasts, renegades, and if you go far enough to the side of renegade, you wind up in jail because you're antisocial. You're going against what society wants you to do, what authority wants you to do. Right? Okay? So the vast majority of human beings, this will in fact work. In fact, it'll work even if they're antisocial because most people are still, when they see the shiny new thing that they're attracted to, they kind of want to possess it. Right? What was that about?
Sorry.
You just pointed at your butt.
No, I didn't.
What were you pointing at under
You knew
there?
what I was pointing at.
She was watching me walk to her car, and when I bent over because I saw a...
When you bent over?
Right, she's looking at me.
Ah.
I think
She
you
knows
did
I
that
picked
shade
up
the
an
same the other way. He said he found the shiny thing, and he said that, and I had it in my head going...
You had him bending over. Right, okay.
Doing a Tai Chi-like move. It wasn't like...
Doing a Tai Chi-like
He was
move.
like more like...
So you were really paying
like
it like that. So you were really paying attention.
Yes, sir?
The reason I noticed is because I was like, wow, that's kind of like one of the Tai Chi
Oh,
moves
okay.
that I,
Taking the full moon, right?
What we're in the space tonight. Taking that.
You guys just want to go back there.
Go back where?
To the funny place.
The funny place.
Yeah.
Makes me giggle.
The sex dojo.
Oh, is that how you think of it?
Why would you Jacob the sex dojo?
I didn't mention sex. You did.
No, we need Jacob. Sex
We need. Oh, so you have a preference.
Sex dojo?
Yeah.
He would get it.
He would get it. Sex
He
dojo.
created it with me.
Oh, with you. You might want to shut up now. You're so dead. I like this new Tara. She's fun.
It's all the fun.
Blame him.
So Jacob would get it, so like you were saying.
Well, you
Yeah.
know what they say when you're at the bottom of the hole. Keep digging.
Keep digging.
It's just more fun.
I don't really care. So.
Exactly. You've stopped taking yourself so fucking
That's what makes it
seriously.
fun.
That's the key. The reason we fuck up out there is because we take ourselves way too fucking serious. The minute you stop, the world becomes your playground. That's when it's okay. Then you can be larger than life. I stopped taking myself seriously a long time ago.
And I saw your persona running all over downtown last night.
You did?
Yeah.
Captain Jack?
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody tries to pull it
Yeah, you
off.
couldn't dance with it because of your...
Because you saw me, didn't
I was like,
you?
yeah, I was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. As I was evolving my SCA persona, it became a blend of all the characters that I've discussed. Austin Powers, Captain Jack Sparrow, Wesley from The Princess Bride, James Bond, and actually there's one other character who's actually a bad guy. Have you ever seen Rob Roy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember What was his
John
name?
Hurt's character?
John Hurt.
No.
No. The sword, the English guy. He was really good with a sword, but he didn't look like he was all that.
The dandy?
Yeah. But he just cut you to ribbons. That was the other side. That was, you don't see it until you're impaled on the rapier, kind of a thing. Right? So, not only was I the rock star, so to speak, which is really the mindset that is most appropriate to moving through the world, being flamboyant, fun-loving, not taking yourself too seriously, and not being Bono. Okay, but I'm talking about more like, well, who did Johnny Depp model for Captain Jack? It's well known. Keith Richards, right? Nobody really.
Keith Richards as his father.
Yeah, that was cool, right? But the truth of the matter is, he's very flamboyant. He's playful. He's a rock star. When I was doing my research into different forms of hypnotic attraction, one of the books that was my resource was a book called Love Trances, from which a lot of the material I'm teaching, I give the guy credit, kind of died on the vine because nobody really bought the book. You could tell he studied with a lot of the people I studied with. Okay? But one of the things he talks about, which is it's an analog to the Master and Commander technique, was, and by the way, that book was designed for women to seduce men. Okay? One of the things I didn't bring out, or I haven't taught yet, but I use it. I was using it before I read it in the book, but I didn't realize that there was actually a woman out there using it. It's called the rock star metaframe. And this woman, the story that he tells was about this woman who was not, she didn't have a supermodel body. Matter of fact, she was kind of on the overweight side. She was curvy, right? But she would go to these clubs and these bars, and the moment she walked in, every guy in the place was hanging all over her. And when we queried about how she did this, she basically took on the frame of the rock star. When she walked in, she was this, famous person that everybody wanted to be around. She knew she was attractive, charismatic, flamboyant, and she acted like everybody there knew who she was, and she was famous. And she bought into it. And you know what? So did everybody else. Classic magic mirror. Okay? The difference is I'm giving you the mechanics. I drilled you in each of the individual aspects of the mechanics so you could call upon each one at will or in tandem. But just pick a persona. Now, when I say persona, pick a category, an archetype that universal archetype that people relate to. By definition, archetypes are universal, but some are more obvious than others. Rock stars are recognized everywhere they go. They're charismatic. They're larger than life. They're fun. Right? You experience an emotional charge just hearing their music. Because it's their music, you associate it with them. You move through the world in that place, people respond. They take on the other frame. Because remember, they're both responses are hardwired. Right? If you occupy the prize frame, the prize position in the frame, by definition, those with less willpower or less agenda must buy into the subordinate positions. Okay? So she'd walk in, not the best looking woman in the place, certainly not the only woman in the place, but she'd have crowds of men around her. Just by shifting her frame. Okay? Powerful stuff. But one of the analogs to that is not take yourself so friggin' serious. Because that's just the acceptance, rejection, projection, connection working against you. You think because you take yourself so seriously that everybody else will too, and so they do. Most people just don't care that much. You're simply not that important. Because a person's favorite topic is them. That's why it's more important how you make them feel about them than about you. Because if you make them feel good about themselves, they're going to reflect it back to you. Whereas if you tell people how important you are, how does that get me more? Right? Because everybody is self-referential. Everybody is self-centered, regardless of what comes out of their mouth. Stop looking at each other that way. Okay? Do it a different way. See, they're so compliant.
You said comes out of, not goes into.
Yeah, shut up. But this is the dynamic, okay? Are you starting to see how this stuff just keeps repeating? It's the same thing over and over and over again. What? Don't show me that shit. I don't want to. By the way, people's gestures have significance. That's where we're going. We're going to talk about the grid, weren't we? But you probably don't want to. You guys want to talk about other stuff besides, seduction and relationships and stuff. That was a loaded question. The reptile's going, no, keep going, keep going. Right?
You're in the headlights.
Huh?
You're in the headlights.
I'm in the headlights?
You're in the headlights.
Yeah, I don't
You're in
think
the
that.
headlights.
Yeah, true. But yeah, seriously. Don't take yourself so seriously. Seriously. Sometimes it's hard. Hypnotica, he goes to extremes with it. He makes his guys walk up and down the street with a dildo strapped to their forehead.
In a dress.
In a dress.
Nice.
And until you stop caring, it's traumatic. Until you stop caring, more people notice you. The minute it's just the way it is and you're okay with it, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Because in their world, you're simply not that important. I know that's really kind of hurtful for us to think about. It should be tremendously liberating. Because it gives you the freedom to fuck up royally and still have a good time. Because people just don't care.
A few years ago, a woman I knew was asked to just be a runner at an auction.
Mm-hmm.
And she had too much social fear to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to her that, because people will be looking at her. I told her, no one's going to be thinking about you. They're going to be too worried about what you're thinking about them.
Mm-hmm. You know what people see when they look at you?
I wonder what he thinks of
Do you know? I'll tell you exactly what they see when they look at you, themselves. They only see the aspects of themselves that they like or hate. It has nothing to do with you. Polarity in either direction is just an aspect of the magic mirror. It's something that you should explore. That universe is trying to give you a signal. Hey, this is one of the things you came here to explore and resolve. You want to do that now, or do I have to turn up the juice? So conversely, if what they see and hear when they look at you is them, how can you leverage that? How can you use that fact and that process is happening to your advantage?
Change your state.
Change your state. That's really not helpful. Although he's close. It's not the answer I'm looking for. I want you guys to get a little bit more tactical in your understanding. Put things together. And not fall asleep like JP over here.
Show them what you want them to be.
Show them what you want them to be.
Go into authority.
What's that?
Go into authority.
Go into authority.
Make them feel happy.
Make them feel happy.
You said that when they see you, they see themselves, only the parts they love and hate. So wouldn't you want to amplify the parts of themselves they love?
Oh,
So now you see
you're getting
a lot
closer.
like that.
We're getting closer.
What are you going to
course, they reflect the part that they like, as John was mentioning, and start shifting to where you want to go.
Okay, but what if you don't know what part it is they like?
Mirror them?
Mirror them?
Shift into them.
Shift into them?
Don't give a damn.
Don't give a damn. They're all aspects of it. They're all possibilities.
Just being inside yourself in those places that you like would cause a reflection to be inside of them too.
Become the person you like. Because if the mirror attracts people who are like you, and you like you, chances are, if you like you, they will too. And if they don't, it's all about them.
It's almost like the Buddhist thing about I felt more. No, what was that saying? Like somebody asked the Buddha about everybody loves you, Buddha. No, it's not that. It's that I love myself so much that the love just radiates around me, and everybody loves me.
What's the first key to loving yourself?
Acceptance.
What?
Lubrication.
Lubrication.
Yeah, I knew he was going to say that for some reason.
Because he wants to get back to the whole Tai Chi move, right? He's still chasing the bright, shiny object that Tara was looking at. Notice that. He's still chasing the bright, shiny object she was looking at. But yes, if the magic mirror is true, or reasonably true, when people see you, what they're seeing is the things they like and hate about themselves. And doesn't it stand to reason that if the people you want to have a positive response to you, the more positive you are about yourself, the more it ripples through the magic mirror, right? The less you care about what other people think, the less other people will care about thinking about how they think about you too, in a way that's useful. That's getting kind of ambiguous, but the bottom line is, the more you deal with your shit, the more freedom and expressiveness and understanding you have of yourself and the dynamics of the mind-body interaction, the more freedom you have. Because by realizing everybody around you is self-centered, but they don't understand that they're self-centered, they've bought into a suit of clothes that they like or dislike and don't realize it, that they've assigned an arbitrary value to, and their field is their perceptions are interacting with yours, but you're telling them how to perceive you. Everybody is. They're just, for you guys especially, you have control of the process. You understand what's going on. It's no longer random and default. You have the tools. Just change how you view you, how you feel about you, who the you is in that particular interaction, and the people interacting with you must change. Yes?
I was going to ask from, I guess, the attraction or so is this why this would work much better than, or instead of having to use, I guess, what used to be called negs? I mean, there's no reason to bring someone down to your level if you could just...
Negs are very tactical and they're usually misunderstood.
Bad. Don't do that.
Don't do it to anybody who's not got a superior self-image or extremely high in the attractiveness scale. Negs are usually reserved for people who are 9s and 10s. For people who are besieged by super supplication and have a very high profile self-image. You do a neg on anybody who's less than that, lady average, and you're going to alienate her. Whereas when you do it on somebody who is very high on the attractiveness scale, you set yourself apart as somebody who doesn't buy into their shit. Since most of them are extraordinarily insecure anyway, you immediately set yourself apart as somebody who doesn't approve of them. Okay, who's not necessarily going to just become a follower, which puts you at a lower status. Okay? And that's what it comes down to. People will tolerate things from high status individuals much more than they will from lower or equal status individuals, because the reptile is geared to pay attention to status. Okay? Society protects its high status members. Okay? In terms of status, who has higher status? The chieftain, the shaman, or the hot virgin?
My answer is different than yours, so.
Yeah?
Hot version shaman.
Hot virgin.
No, it's still wrong.
Who?
No, just either shaman.
The shaman,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, the shaman is the one that actually sacrifices the cow.
Now,
Yes, they would. Well, in that.
when the gods are angry, who gets thrown in the volcano?
The virgin.
Yeah. Because society needs,
What happens in America?
yeah. Society needs the chieftain. Society needs the shaman. They have more status. The virgin generally has more attractivity, right? But not status.
And who decides when the gods are sufficiently angry?
Yeah. Again, without getting too low chunk,
Yeah.
society protects its valued members. Those valued members are a scarce resource. They have status. You are reptilianly oriented to seek status because it's a survival trait. You can't beat it, so you might as well use it. Okay? You know what else is a survival trait? Sense of humor. Any idea why? Some of you might know it.
After creates oxytocin.
Well, that helps you relax. Sign of intelligence. Intelligence is a survival trait. The more intelligent, the more adaptable you become, the greater your ability to survive. When a woman meets a man with a developed sense of humor, she automatically associates him as being smart, being intelligent, and therefore a more desirable mate. And vice versa. And if you look at humor interactions, in dates, women tell less jokes, they laugh more. Because biologically they're programmed to respond to humor, not initiate it. It doesn't mean they can't be funny. It's just the women who tell more jokes on dates tend to be less successful.